Alright, first you're going to take a 90mm socket and remove the lug nuts off of the wheel, and remove the wheel as well. Then you're going to take a 12mm socket and you're going to remove the caliper slider pin bolts. Then slide the caliper off and hang it somewhere sturdy. Then after that, you're gonna probably bang on the brake pads a little bit and to remove them. And if the shims don't come loose, try to use a pry tool or a flathead screwdriver to remove them. Then you're gonna take a 17mm socket to remove the caliper bracket bolts on the back. Try to use some lubricant if they are too difficult to remove, because sometimes they can get seized up and they won't be as easy to get off. Next, you're going to take a Phillips screwdriver to remove the brake rotor, and then probably hit it a little bit with a hammer or whatever if you're trying to remove it, because sometimes they get stuck. And then after that, you're going to take a pliers or a wire cutter, and you're going to remove the cotter pin for the upper control arm, where the upper control arm and the steering knuckle arm meet, and just discard it. Well, not discard it, but just keep it in a safe place. And then you're going to go to your tie rod and you're going to remove the cotter pin that's down there as well. Same tools, just use a pliers to take them off. And then after that, then you're going to take a 10mm socket and remove your ABS sensors. There's a few of these where the line goes up and down the strut, so you just take your time and remove those. And then after that, you're going to remove the nut at the top of the steering knuckle arm and the upper control arm. Remove that nut. And then after that, you're going to remove the nut that's on the bottom of the lower control arm where the steering knuckle arm meet. And now comes for the part that's going to determine if this thing is going to come off as one piece or you're going to have to take it off in separate pieces. If this axle nut does not come off, I'm going to show you what you're going to do, because mine seized up and it was very, very difficult for me to get it off, but I figured it out. So basically what you're going to want to do first before anything, you're going to want to remove your strut at the top where your like your shocks. You're going to want to remove your shocks first. The bolt that's at the bottom where your shocks are, you're going to remove the bolt that goes between. It's a large bolt that goes between your shocks, and it runs from one side to the next. It goes through your lower control arm. You're going to remove that bolt. You're going to take off the nuts at the top where the shock mounting area is in your engine bay. You're going to take off those nuts, and you're going to want to gently, carefully move the shock from underneath that. It takes a little bit of wiggling, but you'll get it eventually. And so after you remove the shock, what you're going to do is you're going to remove both of the bolts for your lower control arm, because the shock is out of the way. Now you're able to get to those. And so now what you're also going to do is you're going to put a piece of metal between your CV axle and your transmission, so your CV axle disengages. And then after that, now what you're going to do is just take your time. This is going to take a little bit of wiggling because all of these parts together are very heavy. So what you're going to do is you're going to move these three parts back and forth, your CV axle, the lower control arm, and you're going to wiggle your lower control arm free of the rest of the vehicle, and it should come out like this. And so basically with the shock out of the way, it's not impeding your ability to do this. If not, the shock would come off with it. But it's better to do it. I found that it was better to do it this way, because now at least you have working room so that you can put all the parts back together the way, like, individually, because since everything is new, all of those new parts are going to be going together one at a time. And so this is what it looks like completely out. It literally took me like a couple of hours to remove it because it was literally seized up. It wasn't going in. So now that it's out, now it's time to install the new parts. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to start with the lower control arm first. I found that this was better. was better for me. I don't know if it'll be better for you guys, but I'm just showing you guys how to do it the way for what worked for me. So you're gonna want to move it in there, and you're gonna want to start. You can start with either bolt, but what I did is I started with the part that goes that's next to the subframe bolt. That passes through the center. It's called a con something. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's a bushing. It's a con something bushing, but you guys know what it is. But that one that I'm working on, as you can see, I put that bolt through first, and it took a little bit of wiggling because, you know, new parts have a lot of issues going in sometimes because they're newer and they're not as worked as the older parts are. And so that one went in decently. And so now I'm putting in the other bolt, the bolt that goes between that goes next to the transmission. So what you're gonna get in there with a ratchet, almost any size ratchet would work. I forgot the bolt size. I'll list it in the when I'm gonna show you what size ratchet that I used to put it in. But otherwise, you know, you using an impact wrench on this is not really recommended because you might strip your bolts. But this is basically what it looked like when this is what your finished product should be. You should see those threads coming through the other side from the bottom up, not the top to the bottom. The head of the bolt is supposed to be at the bottom, and the threads are supposed to be showing off at the top. And then for the other side, that bolt is supposed to be facing the front of the car, like the threads of the bolt is supposed to be facing in the front direction of the car, and it goes in like that. And so afterwards, you see this hole right here. This hole is basically where we took the transaxle or the CV axle off from. And in that hole, you're going to put the new CV axle directly in there and line it up with those. You can see the teeth of the CV, like where the CV axle is supposed to go. You're gonna put the CV axle in there the same way it came off. And so now what you're gonna do is take the CV axle and, you know, line it up directly with the control arm with this side. Like you see the side that has that ring. That ring is gonna go directly into that hole, and when you put it in there, you're gonna feel a click. If you don't feel that click, the CV axle is not completely engaged, and it takes time, but you need to push it in there. Like, just get it. You need to like put a little bit of pressure behind it. It'll take some moving around, but once you push it in there and you feel that click to the point where the CV axle doesn't come loose unless you go back there and pry it out, that's what you're looking for. After you feel that click, CV axle is in. And so now what we're gonna do is install the upper control arm. The old control arm is still up there, but I decided that, you know, it would be best in this whole project to replace it with a new upper control arm, because that would eliminate some of the noise that I'm hearing from the old one. And so as you can see, I took the old one off, but basically you have two bolts that hold this thing on. And when you install it, you're gonna want to install it so that it is at a neutral position, like at a neutral latitude. Don't install it too far up or too far down, or else it's not gonna be, or if it's gonna cause your it's gonna basically cause your wheel to hit the top of your fender, and you don't want that. So basically you're gonna put those two bolts in, and you can get in there with a ratchet. I'll also list the sizes for the ratchet that installs these bolts in a few, but otherwise, you know, once you get them in, they should be, you know, the control arm itself should be elevated under its own strength. So meaning it shouldn't be hanging loosely. It shouldn't be like there should be some play in the control arm, but ultimately you want it in a place where you can move it up and down, and it's free moving for a little bit. And if you guys want to know the brand of these are Moogs. Like Moog suspension parts. All of these suspension parts are Moog suspension parts. But this is basically what it's gonna look like when you're finished. And these come with new bushings as well, so you don't have to purchase any separate bushings. So that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be hanging free. But now, after you do that, you're going to want to put your shocks in, back in where they go. And so as you can see, the bolt direction, it's going to be going, the top of the bolt is going to be showing from this way, and the threads is going to be showing from the other direction. So now the strut and the shock is back where they belong. And now the final thing that we're going to do here to almost sum up this project is install the brand new steering knuckle arm. And so this steering knuckle comes with wheel bearing, it comes with a backing plate, and it comes with a hub. I was happy to buy it like this. I wanted to buy it like this so it eliminate me from having to replace any other parts, because this was sold as an all-in-one set. So I was like, you know what, let me just replace everything at one time. And so now that the shock is in, we got the CV axle in, we have the lower control arm in. Now we're gonna bring in that steering knuckle, and it actually has some pins that you have to align with the ABS sensor. So make sure those pins will it's like a piece of metal that's behind it. Make sure those are lined up correctly before you put it against the CV axle. And now what you're gonna do is you're gonna line it up, you're gonna push the CV axle into it, and then you're gonna align it with the upper control arm, and you're gonna also align it with the lower control arm. And as you align these, you can install your nuts, just hand thread them on, make them hand tight just so that they can sit in place before you tighten them. And then after that, what you're gonna want to do is put the nut on the lower control arms bolt, the one that goes on the lower control arm. Just thread that together, and then the rest of this is actually, my camera died right here, so the rest of this is not on video. But what you're gonna do is, after you're done with this, because you're almost finished, once you tighten these, you're gonna tighten that lower control arm bolt, you're gonna tighten the bolt for the upper control arm, and you're also gonna tighten the bolt for, well, not the bolts, but you're gonna tighten the nuts for the lower control arm, upper control arm, cotter pins, and put cotter pins through all of them. And also, after you're done with that, the steering knuckle arm is going to come with a axle nut. So basically, this axle nut is gonna be the new axle nut for that CV axle. They should fit just fine. If they don't fit, then you're gonna have to buy an axle nut. But usually these parts should fit together, because if you order them for the same vehicle. But basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna put that axle nut on, and there's gonna be a little gap where basically the center of the axle comes out of the steering knuckle arm. And well, what you're gonna do is there's supposed to be like a little nudge there, or a little piece of metal. You're gonna take a hammer and a flathead screwdriver or a pick, and you're gonna knock that against and you're gonna knock that in after you tighten it. And basically that's gonna serve as a safety feature, so that the CV axle does not come loose from the rest of the unit in the unlikely occasion that it may get loose. But that's just a safety feature. And so after that, what you're gonna wanna do is do the reverse of what we did before. Now that everything has cotter pins and is safety, now we're gonna wanna put the brake rotor back on. Once you get the brake rotor back on, you're gonna put the caliper bracket and tighten everything and torque them down to spec. And then afterwards, you're gonna wanna put the brake pads back on where they belong. And after that, then we're gonna take the brake caliper, reattach it to the caliper slider pin, and torque those down to spec as well. And then after those things are settled, then we're gonna take our wheel, and we're gonna put the wheel back on the vehicle, and we're gonna reattach all of our lug nuts and tighten them down to, and we'll torque them down to spec as well. And after that, your project is complete. Then you can lower the car and test drive it and see how it feels, and see if there's any more play in the suspension, or if there's anything else you may need to replace. Then you can make arrangements for your next project. But otherwise, that's how you replace your control arm, your lower control arms, upper control arms, CV axle, and steering knuckle assembly on a 2009 Honda Accord, or the 8th generation Accord, as it is from 2008 to 2012. And so, if you guys found this video helpful, like, share, subscribe, comment, and share it with anybody who is working on their car, or probably doesn't know the full detail of what they need to do, or if they ran into this situation. they can, you know, help themselves to remove it. And so, you know, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care of your cars.